So, you've probably seen the headlines. They're all buzzing, right? Celebrating these record highs for the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, the Dow. It's easy to look at that and think the story is pretty simple, but it's really not. In this explainer, we're going to go beyond those headlines to uncover the three powerful, interconnected stories that are really shaping our economy. Let's get into it. First, we'll look past those shiny market highs to see what's actually going on. Then, we are going to dive into the AI infrastructure boom, which is huge. After that, the major crossroads facing the electric vehicle market. And finally, Washington's surprising new playbook. And at the end, we'll tie it all together with your key takeaway. Okay, so let's jump right into that first big theme, moving beyond the simple story of market highs to get to what's really driving all these numbers. I mean, the simple story is right there in black and white. It seems like investors have just shrugged off things like a potential government shutdown, and they've pushed the major indexes into record territory. You look at the surface, and it looks like a classic, straightforward bull run. But when you look just a little bit closer, things get, well, they get a lot more complicated. For instance, the ADP employment report showed the private sector actually cut jobs in September. And some of the valuation metrics out there are sparking talk of an overheated market. So what gives? If it's not just blind optimism, what powerful forces are actually at play here? Let's dig into the first one. The first of these massive forces is the AI infrastructure boom. And I gotta tell you, it's about way more than just lines of code. We all think of AI as software, right? But its explosive growth is creating this incredible demand for real-world, physical stuff. It's really this fascinating chain reaction. You've got this explosion in AI software, which creates unprecedented demand for these super specialized chips. That's why a company like NVIDIA has just gone stratospheric. Well, those chips have to go somewhere. They go into these huge data centers that are being built at a frantic pace. But here's the real kicker. These data centers drink up an unbelievable amount of electricity, which leads us all to a very, very unexpected place. That's right, nuclear power. To fuel this AI revolution, big tech is looking very seriously at nuclear energy. I mean, the International Energy Agency estimates that by 2030, data centers will use more electricity than the entire country of Japan does right now. So this sudden, massive need for reliable, carbon-free power, it's ignited what people are calling a nuclear renaissance. But this whole renaissance thing faces a huge bottleneck, 99%. That is how much of its nuclear fuel, its uranium concentrate, the U.S. imported in 2023. This massive dependency completely turns the AI boom into a geopolitical challenge. It just goes to show you how a digital trend can have incredibly profound, physical, real-world consequences. And this idea of foundational structures is popping up in other really surprising places. For example, check out this recent breakthrough. Scientists can now grow a notochord from human stem cells. A notochord is basically the biological GPS, or blueprint, that guides the formation of an embryo's entire nervous system. You can think of it as a parallel, right? Just like the notochord organizes complex biological growth, the new infrastructure we're building for AI is organizing our economic growth in completely new ways. Okay, that brings us to our second big story, the electric vehicle crossroads. This market is no longer a simple tale of everything's growing. It's becoming a market of extremes, a real competitive battleground where you can start to see some clear winners and losers emerging. And honestly, there's no better example of this than Tesla. On the one hand, you have a record-breaking third quarter. Deliveries jumped almost 30%. Amazing. But on the other hand, you have this stark warning. With that big $7,500 EV tax credit expiring, a lot of that demand was probably pulled forward, and now the forecast is that Q4 deliveries are likely to tumble. It just captures the tension perfectly. A fantastic present, completely overshadowed by a very uncertain future. And this pressure isn't just coming from inside the house. While Tesla is facing these headwinds, its Chinese competitors are hitting record highs. You got XPeng and Xiaomi both topping 40,000 deliveries in September for the first time ever, and NIO also reported a record month. The competitive landscape is heating up, and it is heating up dramatically. And look, this isn't just a Tesla story. Other EV makers like Rivian are also feeling the squeeze, narrowing their delivery forecasts, slightly lowering their targets. It really shows that the whole sector is maturing out of that initial hype phase, and it's entering a much more complex, much more volatile period. All right, our third and final theme here takes a turn from corporate competition to government intervention. Let's call it Washington's new playbook. In this story, policy isn't just some boring backdrop for the market. It's becoming a powerful and often unpredictable force that's driving the whole narrative. A perfect case study for this is the plan known as Trump RX. It's a really bold initiative to create a direct-to-consumer website for Americans to buy prescription drugs at lower prices. This would completely upend the traditional model, and as you can imagine, it's sending massive waves of uncertainty through the entire pharmaceutical industry. And the language being used here is, well, it's anything but subtle. This quote from a letter that was sent to drug makers just shows you how forceful the political pressure has become. This isn't just policy talk, it's a declaration of intent, and it has companies and investors just scrambling to figure out what in the world is going to happen next. So, how has the market reacted to all this? Well, mostly with confusion. So far, only one major player, Pfizer, has agreed to lower prices. And experts are pointing out that the order itself lacks real teeth. There aren't any clear penalties if companies don't comply. The result? A pretty muted stock reaction, which suggests that investors think this is probably more bark than bite. It's just creating a lot more questions than answers. So, we've looked at three very different stories, right? A tech boom creating a resource crisis, a huge growth industry hitting a competitive wall, and a government policy that's shaking up a major sector. Now, let's connect the dots. These are really the three engines you need to understand to get what's happening today. First, you have the AI boom, a digital revolution with very real physical demands. Second, you've got the EV crossroads, where the story is now about intense competition, not just endless growth. And third, the Washington playbook, where policy has become this key and often really disruptive force. So the really crucial point here is this. Looking at the market hitting a record high tells you what is happening, but it doesn't tell you why. Real understanding, the kind that matters, comes from seeing how these powerful undercurrents, technology, competition, and policy, all intersect and influence each other to create the market we see today. And all of that leaves us with one final forward-looking question. As these three powerful forces, technology, competition, and policy, continue to collide and reshape entire industries, from energy to automotive to healthcare, the real question isn't just about what's moving the market today. It's about which industries will be transformed tomorrow, and which ones might get left behind.